Hi everyone, it's Sue with Ully Cat's Designs and Ully Cat's World blog. And today I have a Karen Burniston Design Team challenge for the month of November, and it's to use the Fun Faces stamp set. And this is what the stamp set looks like. It allows you to stamp anything from the paper people, the woodland animals, winter animals, monkey and lion, bookworm, the witch, the skeleton, princess and mermaid, the spring bunny, the lamb, horse, cow, the goat, cat and dog, safari animals, the dragon, the gnome Santa, and then these fit the leaping animals as well as some of the bayou animals. So that's the stamp set that I'm required to use, and you'll see how I'm going to use it in a little bit. But first we're going to be getting our card base, and it's going to be a slimline card. So I'm starting with a piece of white 65-pound cardstock that is 8 5/8 this way and 7 1/2 this way. I've scored it in half so that I now have a card that's slightly more than 3 1/2 inches tall and a little over 8 1/2 wide. And what I like to do is I like to get my paper on, and this is literally decorative paper. And when I make my card bases, I find if I don't mark which is the top and which is the back, I get confused. Now this one, I specifically want things at a certain place, and I like to cut my paper at least 1/4 of an inch wider and such than my actual card front, because at this point I'm just going to trim off. You'll notice because I used plaid paper on the inside, I did match my stripes, and that is our card base. Now I've gone ahead and made my series of animals using the bear from the winter animals and the woodland animals to make my squirrel, fox, and raccoon. And as I said, the Fun Faces has stamps for the fox and raccoon and the squirrel, and for the bear it has a stamp for the nose and mouth. You still need to use the die to get the placement of the eyes. And then I decided I want to have some kind of fall fruit or something that the other animals, the squirrel has its acorn, but it didn't make sense for the others to have acorns, so I gave them apples that I made from the fruit tree. This is like an add-on set for the tiny trees. And I'm using my T ruler so that I can line up the bottom edge of my ruler along the white strip that I added to the front of my card. And then at approximately the center is where the raccoon's going to go. But the squirrel and the fox have a little bit different diameters. They're both approximately 1 1/2, but the fox is a tiny bit wider. So the raccoon is not perfectly in the center, but I'm going to start with him. And on the bears, I also use the die to kind of stencil in the ear. Where I grew up, we had little red squirrels, so that's why my squirrel is made from the same kind of orangey red cardstock and then covered with some brown distress ink. I'm just going to take my cloth to kind of suck up any stray glue, and now I'll go and cut the earpieces again. So we've got all of our animals on, and now I want to decorate this strip that I've added here with some leaves and acorns. And the acorns came from the woodland set. It's what the squirrel holds. And the oak leaves come from the tree pop-up. So we'll just kind of start with an idea of how we might do this. So I think that's roughly the pattern. I'll have to work a little bit on the spacing and gluing them down. Now I did take on the leaves, I used some of brown ink, and the brown leaves I literally just rubbed across the ink pad. For the orange leaves, I daubed brown onto them. And the acorns, I just used a brown marker to color in their caps. So the border is glued down, and I just symmetrically glued the same piece from each end until I got to the center. And we have some extra leaves and things we can use inside. We're going to be using the Little Labels pop-up. And that set comes with its own decorator dies. And I'm thinking I'm going to put these on before I glue the piece in. And the sentiment comes from the fall phrases, autumn spices, and pumpkin pies. And then we're also going to be using the thankful, grateful, and blessed for the banners at the bottom. Pumpkins come from the autumn elements. And I did take and use my embossing plate and the rubbery silicone mat so that I could get nice embossed impressions. And because this is really just paper, it's not cardstock, it embossed fairly well. And I used brown ink, so I'm just going to put some weights over all of that and let that dry. I've trained all the pieces, all the different tabs. I'm getting it centered inside the card, and I'm putting the fold of the green piece at the fold of the card base. And I'm just going to put glue on the bottom tabs. And I want to make sure these little tabs are bent. And then these also just get glued. So we've let those dry a bit. Take the weights off. And then because we inverted this fold, let me actually take my scissors, take it all the way in there, and just making sure that all of those pop up. As I told you, I stamped the thankful, grateful, and the final word actually on there is blessed, but I wanted to make sure I got the hearts for in the center. To put on the finishing touches of the card, I've used the Word Set 7 Autumn for Happy Thanksgiving, and then I've used this middle-sized crosshatch label, which matches the labels that come with the little label pop-up set. So you can see I've got places to write a message. I've used all the rest of my little leaves. I've actually taken a black fine tip pen and drawn on the veins on the orange leaves just to give them a little more character. And we have a Happy Thanksgiving above the top. And that is our card. I hope you've enjoyed this video and gotten some ideas and some inspiration. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.